The restaurant's soft glow masked the sting in her eyes. Emily, a 24-year-old waitress who had saved for weeks just to buy a decent dress, sat frozen as her date leaned back and smirked. His words cut like glass. "You're just not enough for me." Laughter from the next table rose like a cruel soundtrack. Emily blinked hard, forcing her tears down. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. But then, across the room, a man with broad shoulders, a calm presence, and a little girl by his side raised his hands. His fingers moved gracefully, signing words that would shatter the silence and change everything. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The moment hung heavy in the air. Emily's chest tightened, her date already gathering his jacket, muttering about better company. She clenched her hands under the table, nails pressing into her palms just to ground herself. At the far booth, James Carter, a 35-year-old single dad, noticed. His daughter, Lily, only 8, tugged at his sleeve. She had been born deaf, and James had learned every sign, every gesture, to make her world full instead of small. Lily's wide eyes locked on Emily, and she signed to her father. "She's sad." James nodded. He glanced at Emily, and something in her posture, rigid, trembling, pulled at him. He signed back to his daughter. Kindness matters most when it's hardest to give. Emily pushed her chair back, intending to flee before anyone saw her break. But then James caught her gaze. Slowly, deliberately, he began to sign, his hands spelling words with clarity and intent. "You are enough. You are worthy." Emily froze. She hadn't seen someone sign in years, not since volunteering once at a community center. She understood just enough to recognize the meaning. Her lip quivered, her mask slipping. Lily hopped off her seat, rushing over before Emily could stop her. The little girl gently tugged Emily's sleeve, then signed something small, simple, but piercing. Beautiful. The entire restaurant seemed to hush. Emily's date, halfway to the door, turned with a scoff. "What is this, pity hour?" he sneered. James stood then, his voice steady, his gaze sharp. "No. This is called respect." The man faltered, muttering, then left in silence. Emily's tears finally spilled, not from humiliation, but from the shock of being defended. She whispered, "Why would you?" James gave a small, tired smile. "Because sometimes the right thing is the only thing left to do." The restaurant buzzed faintly with the clatter of plates and muffled conversations, but Emily felt as though the world had slowed into a sharp, surreal focus. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She had been humiliated in public before. Rejected job interviews, snide family comments about her being just a waitress. But never had someone stepped in, cutting through cruelty with such calm certainty. Her fingers tightened around her napkin, twisting it into shreds as she tried to breathe evenly. "Don't cry. Not here. Not again." But the tears betrayed her anyway. James, still standing, didn't waver. His daughter remained at Emily's side, signing with innocent confidence as if words were too small to contain the truth. "Pretty dress, pretty girl." Emily choked back a laugh that was half a sob. "You..." She looked from Lily to James, words breaking. "She called me beautiful?" James's expression softened. "She doesn't lie." The kindness in his voice was a foreign sound, gentle, unhurried, without an ounce of pity. That word respect lingered in the air, cutting deeper than the insult had. For once, Emily didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. The waiter, nervous and fumbling, approached with the check her date had left unpaid. Emily's stomach sank. Her entire paycheck couldn't cover this. She opened her mouth, shame bubbling in her chest. Before she could speak, James reached for the bill. "I've got it." "No, please, I can't let you." But his eyes stopped her cold. They weren't patronizing or smug. They held the quiet insistence of a man who had carried burdens heavier than money. "It's just dinner," he said simply. "Let me." Emily's throat closed. Gratitude and humiliation twisted together like barbed wire. "I don't deserve." "Yes, you do." His words were sharp but not unkind, cutting through her doubt with a force that startled her. Sometimes the world tries to convince us otherwise. Don't let it win. She sat there trembling, unsure whether to collapse into tears or run. But Lily solved that choice for her by sliding into the booth beside Emily and pulling out a notebook from her small backpack. She scribbled with clumsy but eager handwriting. "Friends?" Emily blinked, her lip trembling. "Yeah," she whispered. "Friends." The evening spilled out differently than Emily expected. She thought she'd sneak home to bury herself in cheap ice cream and silence. Instead, she found herself sharing fries with an 8-year-old girl who beamed at her like she was something more than the sum of her failures. James spoke little, but when he did, each word mattered. He asked nothing about her date, nothing about why she sat there with tears ready to fall. Instead, he asked, "What makes you happiest on the worst days?" Emily was taken aback. She picked at her fry. "Music," she admitted. "Not listening, playing, piano. But I don't have one anymore." James nodded thoughtfully. "I used to play guitar for Lily. Couldn't sing in tune to save my life, so I taught myself enough chords to keep her smiling. Music isn't about perfection. It's about survival." His words struck her harder than she expected. It wasn't a cliché. It sounded lived in, like he'd bled for every note. She tilted her head. "You make it sound like you've had your share of survival." He gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Haven't we all?" The weight behind those words made Emily ache. She wanted to ask, but something told her not to press. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you. For tonight. For not letting him—" Her voice cracked. "For not letting me feel like trash." James leaned forward, elbows on the table, his gaze steady. "Listen to me, Emily. The way someone treats you is not the definition of your worth. That guy? He saw cheap, but cheap is all he had to give. That doesn't make you less." For the first time in months, Emily believed it. Just a little. When they finally left, the night air hit cold and sharp, city lights blinking against the darkness. Emily hugged her arms around herself, unsure of what to do with this strange tenderness she'd stumbled into. James walked beside her, Lily skipping between them, her little hands occasionally signing random words: star, safe, friend. Emily tried to mimic the motions, awkward but eager, and Lily giggled silently, clapping at her effort. Emily smiled for real. "She's amazing." "She is," James agreed, his voice lower now, almost reverent. "She saved me more than I saved her." Emily glanced up at him. His profile was strong, etched in streetlight shadows. But there was a heaviness there, something unsaid. She wanted to ask, but she was too afraid of the answer. They stopped at the corner where their paths split. Emily hesitated, fumbling with her purse strap. I don't know how to thank you." James shook his head. "Don't. Just, when you see someone hurting the way you were tonight, don't look away. Do for them what you'd want someone to do for you. That's all I ask." Her throat tightened. That was kindness, raw and unadorned. It wasn't charity. It was a quiet command, a challenge. Lily signed something quickly to her dad and then to Emily. James translated softly. She wants to know if you'll join us tomorrow. We're going to the park. She's learning a new song in sign. Emily's chest swelled with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I'd love that, she whispered. James gave the faintest smile, one corner of his mouth lifting. Good. Then we'll see you tomorrow. Emily lay awake that night, staring at the cracks in her ceiling. Every insult from her date replayed like poison on loop. Not enough, not enough. But James's words cut through, steady and strong. Sometimes the right thing is the only thing left to do. She realized it wasn't just the kindness that moved her. It was the strength behind it, the conviction. And maybe, just maybe, she could find that in herself too. Tomorrow, she promised. Tomorrow she wouldn't hide her tears. She'd let kindness in. The morning sun spilled through Emily's blinds, warm and golden. But she lay still, staring at the cracked ceiling with restless thoughts buzzing in her chest. She almost convinced herself not to go, telling herself James and Lily had been kind out of pity, that maybe she'd been a burden. But then Lily's little hands flashed across her memory, spelling beautiful, her smile as wide as the whole room. That had been no pity. That had been pure truth. Emily dressed simply, jeans, a sweater with loose threads at the cuff, and walked toward the park. Her steps felt heavy, each one echoing the words she carried from last night. Don't look away. Do for them what you'd want someone to do for you. When she arrived, the park was alive with laughter. Kids darting across the playground, joggers looping the trail, couples sipping coffee on benches. And there they were. James on the bench with his guitar, strumming clumsy but heartfelt chords, and Lily in front of him, signing along to the rhythm. She looked like the sun personified, small hands painting words in the air. Emily paused, overwhelmed by the tenderness of it. The way James's eyes lit up when Lily's motions matched his chords, the way he looked at her as though she wasn't deaf but radiant. That was love. Steady, unconditional, the kind Emily had longed for, but rarely witnessed. Lily spotted her first, with a delighted squeal, silent but louder than sound. She rushed over, arms wrapping around Emily's waist. Emily laughed, hugging her back. James looked up. His eyes softened, relief flickering across his face as though he hadn't been sure she'd come. You made it? I said I would. Her voice was steadier than she expected. I don't break promises. James studied her a moment longer, then nodded. Good. Not many people keep their word anymore. She sensed the weight in his tone again, that shadow of a story unspoken. But before she could respond, Lily tugged her hand, dragging her toward the bench. She wants you to join, James explained. She's working on learning to sign the lyrics while I play. It's her way of speaking to the world. Emily hesitated. I don't know if I'll get it right. Neither did I, James admitted, a hint of a smile. But we learn by trying. So she did. Emily sat on the cool grass beside Lily, watching her little hands carefully shape each word in the air. Emily mimicked the motions, awkward and slow. But Lily giggled, correcting her with gentle taps. Soon, Emily found a rhythm, signing clumsy phrases, laughing at her mistakes, and feeling something shift inside her. She wasn't just learning signs, she was learning how to be present, how to be seen. When the song ended, the park had grown quiet. A small crowd had gathered nearby, parents, kids, strangers, watching with curious fascination. Lily hadn't noticed. She just beamed at Emily, proud of their shared accomplishment. But James noticed. His jaw tightened as whispers rippled through the crowd. Some people smiled, touched, others sneered. One man muttered, "Cute, but isn't it sad? A deaf kid stuck in her own little world." The words hit like a slap. Emily's chest flared with anger. Before she knew it, she stood, her voice sharp, trembling but loud enough for all to hear. She's not stuck in her world. She's teaching us how to step into it. And maybe if we listened more, we'd realize it's a better world than the one we keep ruining with our cruelty. The crowd silenced. James's fingers stilled on the guitar strings. Lily looked up at Emily with wide, glowing eyes. For the first time, Emily didn't shrink. She didn't hide her tears. She let them shine. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "I spent last night being told I wasn't enough, and I believed it. Because when you hear lies long enough, you start to think they're true. But then this little girl right here, looked at me and told me I was beautiful, and I realized something. The world doesn't decide your worth. You do." The silence stretched, then broke with scattered applause. A mother near the swings clapped first, then others followed. Some still looked uncomfortable, shifting as though Emily had called out something buried deep in their own hearts. James stood slowly, watching her with something unreadable in his eyes. Respect, yes. But more than that. Recognition. He had seen battlefields, loss, survival. And now he saw her fighting her own war, right there in the open. When the crowd dispersed, Lily hugged Emily so tight it nearly knocked her off balance. She signed rapidly, hands flying, and James translated quietly, "She says you're her hero now." Emily's knees buckled. No, I'm no hero." James stepped closer, his voice low. "Heroes don't see themselves as heroes. They just do what's right." She looked up at him, her throat tight. "And you? What about you?" He exhaled slowly, almost as if he'd been waiting for that question. "I'm just a dad. A man who's failed more times than he's won. But when it comes to Lily, failure isn't an option. She deserves more than what the world gave me." Emily felt the weight of his confession. He wasn't boasting. He was bleeding truth. And in that moment, she realized the kindness he'd shown her wasn't random. It was born from survival, from a man who knew what it meant to be broken and refused to let others stay that way. "James," she whispered. Her voice caught. "You saved me last night." He shook his head. "No, Emily. You saved yourself. I just reminded you how." Her tears fell freely now, but they weren't the kind she hid. They were the kind that healed. That evening, as the sun set behind the park, Emily walked home with James and Lily. For the first time in a long time, her heart felt lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because she wasn't carrying it alone. As they parted ways, James looked at her, something soft flickering in his eyes. "Emily," he said, his voice steady. "Don't forget this. The world will try again and again to tell you you're not enough. Don't let them. And if you ever forget, we'll remind you." She nodded, her voice trembling. "I won't forget." As Lily waved goodbye, signing, "See you soon," with a grin, Emily felt it deep in her bones. This was not the end. It was the beginning of a story where kindness didn't just save her, it made her strong. And for the first time in years, she whispered to herself words she finally believed. "I am enough."